A good freedom fighter, a good activist is somebody who tells no lies and claims no easy victories. What we need to be doing now is not so much celebrating leadership, but interrogating leadership.
Yeah.
But interrogating what does this moment call for? What kind of leadership that we actually need?
Well, friends, welcome to the LeadingSelf Podcast. My name is Gugulethu Maqetuga, your host. This podcast is about celebrating leaders and celebrating leadership as a concept, because we know how leadership impacts people, impacts society. And today we'll learn more about how leadership impacts the planet. So we have one of probably my favorite people on earth. My friend, my brother, my mentor, my former lecturer, Mr. Kumi Naidoo. Kumi, welcome to the LeadingSelf Podcast.
Thank you so much, Googs, and it's wonderful to be with you and to see you.
Wow. It's been more than over 30 years that we've known each other.
Yeah, you were a student at the ML Sultan Technical College, now Durban University of Technology.
Yes.
Studying journalism. And actually what had happened was your political science lecture had absconded in the middle of the... So I was then the head of SACED, the Adult Education NGO, which played a big role in the liberation struggle here. And somebody called me up and said, hey, actually it was Sharon Chetty, a fellow journalist and friend, said he's desperately searching for somebody. And it was and it was one of the best, most enjoyable things I did. And I'm glad that I have friendships with you and many others.
Iman, we had Iman on the show as well. Yeah. So thank you so much, Kumi. I mean, it's quite humbling and an honor to have you. Kumi, you've been involved now in the global space around issues of global warming. I don't even know actually what's the right term. Is it climate change? Is it global warming? But you've been involved in this space, to bring sort of awareness and to raise our consciousness around how we are literally damaging the planet. Are we learning as people?
So I have three big reflections I'm going to give first, right?
Yeah.
So firstly, going to the approach to the podcast, which is celebrating leadership.
Yes.
I think that we should be following the guidance of Amilcar Cabral, the anti-colonial leader of Guinea-Bissau in West Africa, who said, a good freedom fighter, a good activist is somebody who tells no lies and claims no easy victories. So as I sit now, having been in the struggles for justice from an early age of 15 in Durban till now, which is like more than 45 years, I'm embarrassed to say, I am very much of the view that what we need to be doing now is not so much celebrating leadership, but interrogating leadership.
Yeah.
But interrogating what does this moment call for? What kind of leadership that we actually need? So, for example, one of my journey of interrogating where do we put our energies? Because one of the most important decisions of leadership is where do you put your energies?
Yeah.
Because, you can, like myself, I could work in poverty, anti-poverty work, I can gender equity, climate activism, and so on. But another question is, where geographically do you put your energies?
Yeah.
Do you put it, like I am quintessentially a grassroots activist because most of my life was grassroots organizing, right? My early activism. So you can work locally and that's good. You can make a difference. You can work in your province, in one of our 9 provinces in the country, or you can work at the national level, or you can work at the continental level, or you can work at the global level. So now, when I was growing up in the 80s, there was a slogan that said, think globally, act locally. What was behind that slogan was, irrespective of what issue you were trying to address at the local level, you need to understand better how global institutions, global power, global discourse was having an impact on what you could or could not achieve at the national and local level. So then in 1990, as the Berlin Wall came down and so on, a feminist economist in India, Devaki Jain, said, hang on a minute. If we think globally and we act solely locally, but when we look at it, real power around lots of things are shifting from the national to the global levels, then if we as people in the global south actually think globally and act solely locally, and real power on currency management, on HIV, AIDS, pricing of drugs, which is done at WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization. Climate change cannot be addressed as a national issue. It has to be fought at the global level. Economic policy, which should be the reserve currency. Why should the dollar be the reserve currency? Why should it not be something? Because before it was gold. And in the US, when the US did that, it gave them a lot of power, right? So then this new movement that Devaki Jain was part of was called DAWN, Development Alternatives for Women in a New Era. And the new era was the fall of the Berlin Wall in a period 1989, right? And so then she said, actually, maybe we should flip that slogan on its head. Maybe we should think locally and act globally, meaning think what our local needs are. If we need life-saving pharmaceutical drugs and we need to fight at the global level on that, as well as nationally, obviously, then that's what we need to do. And I would say my position is we don't have the luxury to act only locally or globally. We have to think locally, globally, as well as continentally and so on. And act in all levels. But each of us have to make our own leadership choice as to what our skills, our inclinations are, where we can have the most biggest impact.
But are we listening though? I mean, is the world listening? I mean, are leaders listening? What is your take?
I think our leaders all suffer from a similar medical challenge, right? That they have a real problem with their hearing facilities. They hear, they listen, but are not able to hear and internalize. So there's a very high level of what psychologists will call, you being a psychologist, cognitive dissonance. The denial of reality, right? And so, I want to say something, right? Like about people say, oh, you were a human rights activist, you were working on poverty, and suddenly you left poverty to work on the environment and climate. And when I started at Greenpeace, right, I had to do oh my God, literally probably 100 interviews with media all around the world, because I was the first person from the global south to be appointed as head of Greenpeace. So there was a bit of a big thing. In fact, Le Monde, the French newspaper.
Le Monde,
I don't know what to make of it, but they carried the headline when I was appointed. It was on the back page of the main section. It's where they do profiles of people. And it was called From Greenpeace to Black Peace.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And so the main question journalists asked me was, oh, so you've been involved in all of these areas. Now you're leaving human rights, democracy, gender equity, and anti-poverty work to go to environment and climate. And then I said, well, the way I see it, the challenge to address climate change, on the one hand, and the challenge to address poverty, inequality, economic injustice, and so on, must, can, and should be seen as two sides of the same coin. So my entry into climate change activism is very different from most people, especially in the global north, where the starting point is some environmental disaster they've seen or some concern around some species that is vulnerable and so on. My journey into climate activism comes as an anti-poverty activist, right? Because who are the people that are suffering now, today,
Global South,
as a result of climate impacts? And therefore we talk about climate injustice. We say we're fighting for climate justice, and we say what we're dealing with is climate injustice. When we say climate injustice, what does that mean? It means those parts of the world that contributed most of the problem are not paying the first and most brutal price of impacts. Africa as a continent has contributed collectively quite little to historical emissions. I should say South Africa as an individual country is a culprit, right? We are one of the worst emitters in the world. We're in the top 15 emitters in the world, right? So, but even if you put South Africa's emissions in it and you look at the continent as a whole and look at the size of the people on this continent, in excess of 1 billion now, our footprint has been very, very minimal. However, when you look at who are paying the first and most brutal prices of climate impacts, it's people who have contributed least to the problem. And that's why we say we have climate injustice. So my journey into climate activism was very much driven that the poor and the working class and the socially marginalized are the ones who are going to pay the worst impacts, because we see it. When extreme weather events, like say when the Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in 2005, the rich people jumped into their 4x4s and drove away. And the poor people were left to deal with it, right? So there is a very big class dimension to who causes the climate crisis and who pays for it. Because who drives the climate crisis is the most wealthiest 1% of the global population. Because they have these ultra high carbon emitting lifestyle with the private jets and multiple homes and all of that stuff.
Wow. So we will get more into that, because I know that it's not only a passion, but it's a cause. It's a cause. It's a meaningful cause to not only to raise awareness, but to lead to change. But before we get there, Kumi, let's go back a bit.
Sure.
Let's go back to the beginning. So you grew up in Durban. And as you said, you started activism around the age of 15. Tell us a bit about those early days. You know, I know you are grassroots to the core.
So, listen, at 15, you haven't figured the whole world out, right? But what you have figured in apartheid South Africa at that time, if you were in those days, the language that we used, if you were African, Indian, or a colored child, that few occasions that your parents took you on the bus from your township to town, inevitably that bus passed some white school. Where suddenly you'd look and you'd see, my God, they got 4 playing fields. And in our school, my primary school, we had no grass on the playground. And in fact, it was like 60 meters long, but still for school sports, we ran 60 meters, but we call it 100 meters. Right? For primary school, it didn't matter too much then. So, you know, you visually, apartheid was kind of cocooned and protected, right? Because you could live in your little ghetto and think that, well, that's all life is. But when you left, right, periodically, and when you saw how some people lived, you said, this cannot be right. And so in 1980, there was a national student uprising when I was 15 that started in Cape Town. And it was driven by various issues, but one of the slogans that I remember from that time was the kids in Cape Town made 2 very memorable banners. One was, you pay our teachers peanuts, no wonder we get monkey education. Right? The second was, that time there was a Ministry of Indian and Colored Education, right? And the minister at that time was a guy called Andrea Steyn, right? Spelled Steyn. And one of the slogans that came out of Cape Town, which just went like wildfire throughout the country and reached Durban, was, "There's a stain, Stain. There's a stain in our education system."
Wow.
Right?
Wow. Brilliant.
And so then,
Brilliant copy.
So then when we start, the boycott, I was standard 8, right? So the older students were metric, right? So it was also a very traumatic time for me because my mom had just committed suicide 2 weeks earlier. And so the boycott starts literally the night of my mother's final mourning ceremony, like 16 days after she passed. The older cousins and relatives were pulling all the high school students into private discussions in the bedroom in my house saying, "Hey, there's a thing happening. We all need to organize. We need to act in solidarity. Only if we act together with everybody will we get education for everybody to the same." So next morning I was there at the school before the prayer services started, went and mobilized and what have you, and then got involved. And my first march was, mainly on the school property.
On the school, in the school grounds.
And we were chanting, the slogan at the front of the march was, "We want equality," meaning we want equality in education. By the time the slogan got to the back of the, the younger kids, the 12-year-olds were chanting, instead of saying, "We want equality," they were chanting, "We want a color TV. We want a color TV." Because they thought the slogan in the front was,
"Oh, color TV.
We want a color TV." And if I'm brutally honest, at that time, I wanted a color TV
anyway.
And equality almost equally. And both appeared equally unattainable at that moment in my life, right? So the lesson there, though, to young people listening, right? And to older people as well, is you don't have to be perfect. Why should we as ordinary citizens be expected to have all the answers in detail to intractable problems that our politicians and business leaders with all their wealth, money and power have not been able to figure out? So why should we be expected, right, as people seeking justice, to have all the blueprints? Like when the climate activists from Europe, Greta Thunberg, was before the Republican-controlled Senate. And they were asking them, so how do you deal with transitioning? How do you deal with, this scientific issue and that scientific issue? And they said, "We are kids. Why do you expect us? You all don't have the answers to the problem, right? What we know is that you listen to what the science says." Right? And this year, let me just say, is one of the biggest tragedies of the moment of history that we find ourselves in. And that is overall the undermining of science, particularly coming out from the Trump administration in the US, right? And so, and there's no bigger scientific enterprise in the history of humanity that I can think of bigger than the the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, where every government has had scientists represented, and the science is clear. And the science is clear that we are running out of time. And so, sorry, I went back.
No, 100%.
So coming back to the childhood. So then, got expelled from school. And I always say to young people, I'm not saying you must do things to get expelled from school. But for me, at that moment in my life, getting expelled from school was the best thing that could have happened to me. I'll tell you why. Because the apartheid education system was all about rote learning, right? Where you were like just fed stuff. Some of it was lies. So once I was expelled from school, I had to self-study and eventually wrote my metric exams. The metric exam I wrote was not what my friends wrote. There was, like for adults who drop out of school and want to go back.
I bet.
So that time it wasn't called ABET. In fact, it was called the Joint Matriculation Board exams, like JMB exams. And the reason we had to do that was because our teachers came to us after we had been expelled and beaten up and arrested and all of that. They said, "Listen, boys, saying to my brother and I, even if you'll do really well in the exam, they're going to blacklist you. They want to do everything to make sure you'll either don't get, there were two things we were dealing with, blacklisting and something called shunting. Okay. So blacklisting is where basically the school will tell the education department, don't give that person a matriculation pass because they're going to go to university and create havoc with resistance and so on. So the teachers were saying, there's a good chance you're going to pass. Yeah. But they'll fail you. But there wasn't so much of scrutiny with that other exam. And they said, why don't you try that? Then shunting, by the way, so shunting, the Terra Lakota used to tell the story about how shunting in the normal sense of people who, direct trails, about how that was a occupation that was reserved for white South Africans at that time. It was a protected thing, even though it did require too much skills. Right? But shunting in the way it was used at that time was especially for teachers, right? Because if you were a teacher and you qualified, a student teacher and you qualified, and if you were an activist, then they shunted you, which means if you were from Durban, they sent you to the smallest rural community with, like I know friends who were sent to PhD from the border with Swaziland, right? Where the schools were like about 100 students, you were completely isolated. Of course, you could try to conscientize those students, but the impact of that was not going to be so great if you were in an urban center with a large numbers of people. I see.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, the whole issue around how you had to write exams in secret and running, I mean, it followed you to varsity. You write in your memoir, letters to my mother, that, sometimes you had to even wear disguise because you were hunted by the police.
Not sometimes.
The time.
When the state of emergency was declared nationally in June of 1986, then basically you could just get arrested and disappeared and so on very easy. In fact, when I used to be in hiding, when the cops used to go to my home in the township in Chatsworth, they would say to my father would say, I don't know where we haven't seen him for months. And then the cops would say, oh, that's very good. Because if we catch him and kill him and murder him, you won't be none the wiser. So you can keep saying, we know you're lying and so on. And so, but that idea of people don't, unless you've gone through it, you don't really know what it means to be on the run. Because when you're on the run, you are your own jailer. That you're like your own prison warden. Right? So like, for example, I was hiding in a basement of a university lecturer while I was trying to figure out, do I write the exams? Do I not write the exams? Right. And the worst thing, only a few people knew where I was. The worst thing you can imagine is a knock on the door. Because if it was somebody you didn't arrange to come. So then I was able to negotiate with my progressive lecturers in the political science department, Mala Singh, Kasim Dokrat, and Prem Singh, where they basically would hand out my exam paper in the venue that was organized, previously announced. So the army and the police, we had the army occupying all three entrances to the campus. So they would go there, they would hand out my sheets, I'll be marked absent, but then my lecturers negotiated with the largely racist Afrikaner administration for me to write the exams on a secret venue on the campus. And one of them used to come and invigilate.
Wow.
And then I had to pass the roadblock to get into the campus. Right? So in the midst, just before all of this, my lecturers again advised me to apply for the scholarship. I had no interest in going overseas because at that time as a young activist, the last thing you want to do is leave the struggle, right? And then, but I went along with it just to see, what happens. And then get a Rhodes scholarship to Oxford, plus I get the French government scholarship to go to France to do also a PhD, and I had to choose between the two of them. But then the Rhodes scholarship said, it's better for you if you finish your honors. So write your exam.
Yeah.
So I had to go through this whole elaborate thing of trying to get into the campus. So I used to be driven into the campus. I was at that period was hiding in the home of a progressive white lecturer and husband, two wonderful people who took risk and hid me. And she was also on campus, so I would drive into the campus, but I would be dressed up with this one suit that I had, in the hot, boiling Durban in January.
Humid.
Right?
Weather.
But the playwright, Ronnie Governor, whose daughter, Preg's Governor, who's, a leading figure in our liberation struggle, set it up with him, where he came, he studied me in my hiding place. I had a big beard and big hair. And at 5 o'clock on morning, I had to go to the studio in Victoria Street, Durban, as it was known then. And this hairdresser, she was like so nervous, you cannot imagine, right? She was not like she was cutting my hair, like she was planting a lumpet mine or something. She was so nervous. But I was many of us were the sleep staff during that time because we were trying to do so many things. So I fell asleep while she was doing my hair. And when I woke up, I'm looking at the person in the mirror. I can't recognize the person. I really didn't think it was me because basically she did a perm. She took out my entire beard. Yeah. Just that and mustache. That was big enough to
deceive police.
Yeah. Then they did the perm. And then he got me those old professorial looking glasses. And for my 4 papers, I made it in and out of the university without being detected, even though the army and the police were occupying the campus.
You lost a lot of comrades around that time. I mean, I can, the first time I learned of Kumi Naidoo, it was, from you in class, and the kind of impact, that those comrades played, Pila, exactly. And some of them, the kind of work that, tell me, what were the values, of that period that you learned? That drove you to be who you are today.
That's such an important question for the moment we find ourselves in. Because if you look at it from a leadership point of view, leaders at that time never or really, right? I would feel comfortable saying never in my own personal experience, right? Never did anything for personal gain. Right? If we had the last 10 rand in our pocket, right, which was a hell of a lot of money at that time, we would take that money, even as young people, put it on the table to print a pamphlet, hire a bus for a rally and so on, right? And so I think the biggest diseases, folks, that we are facing is not HIV, AIDS, cancer, or influenza. It's a disease we can call affluenza. So affluenza, the way some of us describe it, is a pathological illness where people have been led to believe that a good, meaningful, decent life comes from more and more material acquisition, right? I want to look at our president and deputy president at the moment, right? They have accumulated so much of personal wealth, right? I would say to them, why do you now think you actually understand the reality of our people? You live a life together with most of our cabinet ministers and ministers that is completely disconnected with the life of the vast majority of our people. And Madiba, at the CODESA negotiations in the early 90s, made this point. He said, firstly, I want to note that the National Party government was absolutely corrupt. And they were corrupt. Apart from bad policy, they stole and did all sorts of things, right? And then he said, the new government, when we win, will fight corruption and the one gesture that I'm doing is I am cutting my salary as a president.
Wow.
Right? I will take half or less than half of what de Klerk was earning. Right? And then he said, and my members of parliament of the ANC will live amongst the people. They will breathe and experience what the people are feeling so that they will act. Unfortunately, I'm from Yeovil. I can tell you, no community anywhere in the country contributed as many ministers, MPs, and senior civil servants than Yeovil did. Right? And then guess what happened? When they all got
elected,
they all made a beeline to the most comfortable white suburbs.
Yeah.
And places like Yeovil then started to die.
Yeah, to die.
Right? And so like now in Yeovil, we still continue now to struggle to just secure basic things like potholes and water and electricity and garbage collection and so on. And
I mean, it's a nice segue to my next question, because you were invited in 1994 to actually get into government, whether, as a minister but you chose to go into the non-profit space.
So
why?
So that starts before 1994, right?
Okay.
It was one of the most terrifying meetings I had to have in my life, right? So basically, Walter Sisulu was a signatory to a letter to the head of the Sackett Trust, the adult education NGO, where I was in the senior management, saying, can Kumi be seconded to lead up the media production division of, if I did that, I would have asked you to come, but you were PAC, that's why we probably wouldn't have come. But,
I'm a patriot.
So, in any case, obviously I was, and you know what made it more emotional was that Chris Hani had come to our offices, and Chris Hani made the request actually, right? Through my deputy Tami Mali, who was very close to Chris, and said, we need people to be seconded who've got skills and so on. And so I then get approached at the same time to lead the adult literacy movement there was a coalition of about 70 small community-based organizations and some larger ones called National Literacy Coalition, right? Or Corporation as it was known. And so they had the equivalent, they had 16 rands in the bank account.
Okay.
A big vision. And so I have these two offers, right? And they couldn't be further apart, right? And so then thankfully I had people close to me in the trade union movement, and who said to me, and the one person's words really she just passed away recently, Mary Makwanazi, who was one of the founders of the South African Domestic Workers Union, who's from Amlazi. And so I go to see her. At that stage, she's the president of the Women's League in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah.
And she says to me, my boy, whether the ANC has a media division or don't have a media division, they're still going to win this election. She said, my boy, even if you go and try and mess it up and do a bad job, they'll still win the election. So if you're going to be famous, be on TV and be very powerful and so on, go do the ANC job. If you say no to the ANC job, there'll be 100 other people want to do the ANC job. But if you say no to this job, who's going to do that?
Yeah.
And she said, there's never going to be real democracy if our people cannot read and write.
Wow.
And if you can do that work, go do that work. Yeah. And thankfully, most people said, of course, there's no debate.
Yeah.
Comrade Chris made the request. The letter's been signed by, Baba Sisulu. What are you talking about? There's no debate. And I had to go see Baba Sisulu to tell him,
I'm not joining.
I'm telling you, I'm sitting in the reception area. My hands are perspiring. And then he was only about 10 minutes late, right?
Yeah.
And he came out and he apologized for being 10 minutes late. Like with the most, he said, sorry, young man, I kept you waiting. I know you must be busy. I Like all the lines that I was going to say to him, like, thank you so much for making time. I know how busy you are. And he like, throws it back at me. And then I sit down and then I tell him, these are the two offers. And then he said, so have you decided then what you want to do? So I said, I think I want to do the literacy. I think I've decided I'm going to do the literacy job. I'm too scared to say and then he said, so you've decided you're doing the literacy job? I said, yeah. And then he says, so what can I do then? But he's saying it deliberately in an accent or in a way to make me think that he's pissed off with me because now you decided, what can I do then?
Yeah.
Don't waste my time, yeah. And then he wakes up from his side of the table. He comes around, he puts his arm on my shoulder and he says, I was like 29, 30.
Yeah.
And he says, my boy, I'm so proud of you.
Wow.
And he said the same thing Mary Makwanazi said.
Yeah.
He said, don't worry. There'll be many people who want to do this.
Yeah.
Right? What I'll say to you is when I say, what can I do? Now that you've made this brave decision, I want to support you.
Wow.
How can I support you now that you've made this decision? And he said, one thing I have to do is make sure that all the paranoia that we have in the ANC now, I will cover for you. Right? Because, to say no to Walter Sisulu is not, it's not a common thing. And so then he said, no, you'll be an appointee to the Independent Electoral Commission when it's formed. And you just go out and whether they are ANC, whether they are PAC, whether they are whichever political party, even the National Party, you go out and you educate the people on how they can vote. But you won't be able to do that on the election days itself. Yeah. So maybe you can,
Wow. Quite.
And then he became the patron of the Adult Literacy Coalition. You would come when, one of the things people don't realize, one of the most joyous things you can do, right? I'll say this to the people of privilege in our country. Yeah. If you can work with an adult who had been deprived of education, right? And help them get to the point from no literacy to them being able to write the name and sign the name. Wow. And to see the joy and pride in their eyes when they reach that point. You think that and people must remind themselves that the worst expression of apartheid policy was about education. Yeah. Vervoet said, the founding architect of apartheid said, blacks should never be shown the greener pastures of education. They should know that their station in life is to be use of wood and draws of water, basically to chop wood and carry water, right? And people were consciously deprived of their education. Not like, there was a problem, we didn't have teachers or so on. It was a conscious policy to make sure that the vast majority of our people won't get access to education. So for me, education is intrinsically political. It's at the heart.
It's the heart of everything.
And even now, education
is at the heart.
Is what's gonna help us liberate ourselves from the horrific corruption, incompetence, and inefficiencies that we've seen by the government that's been in power for the last 30 years, which I gave my life to as a young person.
I know.
Live with the deep disappointment on their performance.
At least on my side, we are a minority. So
do you know, just on a lighter note, like when one of my funniest moments was I was chairing a workshop in 1990 after all the organizations were banned and I'd come back into the country from exile and so on. And Billy Nair, who spent 20 years on Robben Island, also from Durban, somebody who we loved and respect greatly. He spent 20 years on Robben Island with Mandela and so on. So he was a guest speaker and this was like a youth workshop for Chatsworth and surrounding areas, right? So we had some comrades from Lamontville, Wentworth and so on there, right? And so then that time, the PAC slogan as it came into the country was one settler, one bullet, right? So then one of the activists from Wentworth put up their hand and said, Comrade Billy, I'm very worried that the young people are all going to move and start supporting the PAC because they have more militant slogans and so on. So Billy and I says, what slogans are you talking about? So he says, for example, one settler, one bullet. So Billy and I, he leans back in his chair, he says, no, you shouldn't worry about that, young man. Because the reason the PAC says one settler, one bullet is that they only got one bullet.
Very funny. Very funny.
So,
yeah. No. Kumi, you, and I don't want to say your career, but your activism. Yeah. Rises from the literacy program. You end up heading Sangoko. Then boom, you go into Greenpeace. I mean, Greenpeace, my word, that is a global institution that one could say is basically not a custodian, but looks after the interests of the planet and the people, on the planet. And also, in addition to that, you do Amnesty International work. What would you say is the impact of these organizations? Because they're still active, they're still there. You led them.
So again, we should tell no lies and claim no easy victories, right?
Yeah.
And so, these institutions offer the best that the global north has to offer. Now, I just want to spend a minute on this for those.
Yeah.
So you see, in the old days, people used to talk about third world, first world, right? We were in the third world, and the rich countries of Europe and North America and Australia and New Zealand were the first world. To call us the third world was very demeaning. And then they used to also then say developed and developing, right? And so there was, over the last 20 years, a very strong emergence of actually those parts of the world that were not colonized and mostly are in the geographical south, in the southern, part of in the southern hemisphere, if you want. These, we constitute. Okay, let me ask you if I can flip the script on you. Do a quick quiz. What percentage of the global population do you think lives in the global south?
Sure, could be large.
Yes.
Yeah, a large portion. Yeah.
Okay, but how large?
But probably, I would say between 60 and 70%.
A good start.
Yeah.
I was researching this question about a year ago, and on this, I jokingly say both ChatGPT and DeepSeek and every other online source I could find seem to agree that 88% of the world's population lives in the global north, global south.
Wow.
So then if you think of the domination of countries like the United States and Europe, it's so ultra undemocratic in terms of the presence that they have. Now, when you look at institutions like Greenpeace and Amnesty, they offer about the best that those societies can offer in terms of global solidarity. Not the best, but amongst the best, right? Expressions of caring for the world and not wanting to exercise their dominance and so on. But the reality is, as I used to say when I was the Secretary General of Civicus, World Alliance for Citizen Participation, I used to say all the contradictions that exist in global society manifest themselves in organized global civil society, even when we're trying to be progressive. Very simple example. If you take a UK or a US colleague versus myself, if there was a meeting that came up in South Africa last minute for a meeting with the president or at Addis Ababa with the head of the African Union, they can jump on a plane and be there the next day, right? Me, I have to apply for visas. Right? And I jokingly used to say, if I were to write a book about working at the global level, the title of the book would be Visas, Fucking Visas. Right? Sorry, I don't know what the editorial policy there is.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Because, but when I was headhunted both for Greenpeace and Amnesty, they wanted me to come and help make the organization more representative and more, balance between the power in the global north and global south. So, and to be honest with you, after 10 years at Civicus, building the movement to defend the rights of civil society, promoting the freedom of association, assembly and expression and so on, I was sure I was never going to do another global job, right? Because it's hard. It's living out of a suitcase. Your personal life is messed up.
I mean, you were jumping out of rigs on ships in the South Pacific.
In the Arctic.
In the Arctic. Yeah. In the Arctic, you were jumping off.
But that comes, that came after Civicus. And when I was approached, when I was approached, I was on the 19th day of a hunger strike that I was doing to put pressure on the Mbeki government at that time, to put it in the words of the Zimbabwean human rights. One of the lawyers said to me, you need to get Thabo Mbeki and his government to stop acting like a condom to Robert Mugabe, right? And to remind ourselves that if South Africans owe a debt to Zimbabwe, it's to the Zimbabwean people as a whole, not to a government that starts oppressing its own people.
Yeah.
Right. And so Greenpeace, one of the things that, so I was on a hunger strike after Ricardo, who people know as Ricky Rick. Ricardo was very young then. We got underground into Zimbabwe in December 2008. And he was at Avda then.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, he and a friend of his were going to come. And last minute, his friend couldn't make it. And then I was like, okay, no, don't worry, you don't come. He said, no. I need it for my studies and I'm coming. Because I was anxious about the security thing.
Yeah,
one thing, risky your own life is nothing. Risky your life. Yeah.
And many people don't know that Ricky actually is your son.
Yeah. No, I mean, he came into my life at 8 years old.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest, and the other boys, Shikani, Temba and Tobacco. And have been a big blessing to me.
Yeah.
And so in any case, we go underground into Zim in December 2008. We fly into Livingston. So it's just Ricky and I, eh?
Yeah.
We fly into, I lie.
Yeah.
And another colleague from, Civicus, Mandeep, who's now actually just been appointed the global head of, Civicus.
Okay.
And it's very nice to see the movement is thriving and it's much bigger than. So, we fly into Livingston where the tourists fly into. We dressed in like safari hats and so on. And he smuggles the most, threatening thing to the Zimbabwean regime at that time, which was a video camera. And we then ducking and diving, army, police, roadblocks and so on. And then I had never seen poverty, like hunger, like that. Even the army guys who were stopping us at roadblocks, you could see the belts were like, pulling the without the belt, And so when I came back, I consulted the Archbishop Desmond Tutu and then, and Mama Gracia Michelle and a few other elders. And I said, you know what? I'm going to launch a hunger strike and the objective of and I really won't do it without your support. I'd like you all to call for it. So, Archbishop Desmond Tutu called for it and he fasted every week on a Wednesday. And then I anchored the first 21 days. Then the second 21 days was Nombaniso Gaza, who was then the Commission of Gender Equality. And then, the last was the highly respected and family member to us, Dumisa, who you know as well. But our objective was to get food to flow, to start negotiations. And by the time I handed over to, Nomaniso, it had already, and then Greenpeace, then I come back and I start, on day 19, Greenpeace calls me to say, will you consider doing this job? And then I'm like, being a candidate.
Yeah.
And then I said, thank you. I'm very honored, but this is a really bad timing. And then my daughter who lives in the UK saw me on television doing a BBC interview and I had lost a hell of a lot of weight. And she got a bit scared and she called and she said, hey, why are you still doing interviews and so on? And I said, no, I just did this one with BBC because they came to the thing, and I took this one call with the people because it was long distance from Amsterdam. And when I told her that I wasn't going to consider it, she said, "Dad, I won't speak to you if you don't consider it after you finish your stupid hunger strike." And she said, "It's surprising that somebody like you, who is educated, don't understand that how climate change affects my future, my generation's future." I mean, that's more or less what she said. It had a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
And so my move into climate activism and Greenpeace, by the way, people might not know this. Greenpeace and Amnesty International as brands are in the category of Coca-Cola and so on. I mean, when they rank brands. Now, I'm not a big brand person, to be blunt. I know you're more of a brand person than I am. It's just functional for me.
Yeah.
So the opportunity to go into an institution that also not only was saying the right things on the environment and add support and capacity, it was also about the civil disobedience part of
the trouble.
The good trouble.
The good trouble.
No, because, if history teaches us anything, when humanity has faced a major injustice or a major threat, those struggles only move forward when decent women and men step forward and say,
and do something.
Enough is enough, and no more. We're prepared to go to prison if necessary. We're prepared to put our lives on the line.
Yeah.
And right now, I would say at this age, 60, I just turned 60 in January, as you know.
Wow, yes.
And I would say that I am vehemently opposed to anything but peaceful civil disobedience.
Okay.
Because I believe it is strategically, tactically, and ethically flawed.
Okay.
Right? Because basically, like Trump right now in the US would consider it a big gift if there was mass protests and there was some elements of violence, right? Because that would give the opportunity to then use force.
Indeed.
And so on,
yeah. And I mean, I just want to revisit one point that you point out, especially in your book, around poverty. That, yes, you in fact, you put it quite nicely. You say, if we don't change our behavior regarding climate change, climate issues and global warming, the planet will reinvent itself, but humanity will be dead. So we're actually not doing this thing for the planet per se.
Absolutely.
But we're doing it for humanity. But also humanity faces big challenges, and poverty is one of those biggest challenges that we have. I mean, how do we elevate this conversation? Because, I mean, we have organizations, companies that are throwing away food to manage the market.
Yeah, it's critical.
And next door, people are dying.
Yeah, I mean, basically, our economic system, our energy system, our food system, our transport system, all of these systems are broken, right? And basically what we are doing always is rearranging the deck chairs of the Titanic while humanity sinks, right? We're making these small baby step changes here and there.
Yeah.
Because what is needed is, if you take what COVID taught us, COVID taught us that our economic systems were not serving the majority of people, that so many of us were left very, very vulnerable and so on. And we've had other crises, the Asian financial crisis in 97, the global financial crisis. And when these crises happen, many of our leaders find the courage while the crises are on to say the bold and transformative things that they need to do. So like in the Asian financial crisis in 1997, President of the World Bank, Clinton, various leaders said the world needs a new international financial architecture.
Yeah.
Right? But once the Band-Aid was put over the crisis, it was business as usual.
Back to
2008, 2009, they said they will stop funding fossil fuels through tax subsidies because basically the oil, coal and gas companies, which drive climate change, have been receiving trillions of dollars in taxpayer-funded subsidies, right? And then you'll remember that after COVID, or during COVID, our leaders would say, we'll build back better, build back better, build back better. What's the thing you hear anybody talking about build back better now?
No.
Right? So when we are in the midst of crisis, right, what our leaders' DNA is, it's all about system recovery, system protection, and system maintenance. But what the crises should, if we have the right kind of leadership that we need right now, instead of going that route, they should be leading us down a route of system innovation, system redesign, and system transformation. Because otherwise, we are getting deeper and deeper into crisis. We're seeing inequality and concentration of wealth, both in South Africa as well as globally, getting more and more concentrated. And this cannot be good for democracy, peace, or justice.
Yeah. Wow. Let's bring it back home, Kumi. I mean, you and Sis Louisa lost Ricky. He was a well-loved artist, and he passed. What has that loss meant, for you, and how have you navigated, the loss of Ricky?
So all I can say is, there will be parents listening to your show who have been through the same journey that we've been through.
Yeah.
It's utterly devastating. You never recover fully from it. You have to take the tragedy and try and see what positive thing can come out of the tragedy.
Yeah.
And you have to remember with fondness the good memories and celebrate those. And as Ricky says himself, care for the people around you, and so what we have done since his passing, so because, 6 weeks before he passed, the last time I saw him face to face was after Archbishop Desmond Tutu's funeral. And he said, guys, he says to Louise and I, guys, you're really not good at what you'll do. I said, what you mean? He said, no, you've been fighting for human rights, democracy, gender equity, and all these things since you were teenagers.
Yeah. But
when I look at the world, everything's going in the wrong direction. So why don't you just chill and spend more time with us? The time you should have been spending with us when you're unsuccessfully running around the world trying to save it.
Yeah.
And so I say, why do you think we're failing? And he says, because you'll aim all your messages and narratives at the brain and you'll ignore the heart, the body, and the soul. And most people, and then he even said, look at Trump. Trump bypasses the brain and goes straight to the heart and weaponizes all sorts of things. So I said, do you want us to lie as Donald Trump does? He says, no, but you don't have to be so boring with the truth.
Don't have to be boring with the truth. Yeah. Wow, that's powerful.
And then 6 weeks later, he left us. And then, his wife, Bianca, is such an inspirational person. She's held the family together. It's been hard for the boys and me and the grandkids and so on. And probably the most difficult for Louisa in some ways.
Yeah.
Because, and so we then did what we've always done.
What comes natural.
Which is live with purpose.
Yeah.
Right? So we then, inspired by what he said, started to build a movement to bring the worlds of arts, culture, and activism together. So the foundation is actually called the Ricky Rick Foundation for the Promotion of Artivism. Because we reached, think about it, during the anti-apartheid struggle, most of our people were not able to write. If we thought we were going to move people by going there with long policy papers and all, as some people try to do from time to time, people just got bored and switched off. But if we could take the same messages and engage people in dance and song and theater and other cultural expressions, you can reach millions of people, right? And so I'm pleased to say the inaugural Global Artivism Conference took place in September in South Africa in partnership with the Tshwane University of Technology and various other organizations. And we had 89 countries, 750 people. And the second convening is about to take place in Salvador, Bahia, Brazil, just before the climate negotiations take place in the Amazon in November. And we're hoping to have more than 100 countries and 1,000 people and so on. But what is this movement trying to do? It's trying to get society to recognize that throughout our existence, cultural creatives and artists have been critical to making this place. And we don't, in our education system, we don't invest sufficiently. So, we are trying to showcase that, try to identify the challenges that cultural creatives face, and then to come up with solutions. So any artists, or people who know artists, interested in this, they can join this global movement, by just going to globalartivism.org. The conference will be hybrid, so those who cannot make it, they can still be part of it. Wow. The other thing, of course, given the way Ricky passed, and you were really helpful in helping us figure it out in those very painful early weeks and months after his passing, for which I'm very grateful for goods. So we try to contribute to the mental health thing and speak about it. And Louisa and I decided part of what we should do is show our vulnerability. So we have 3 months after Ricardo's passing, we were in the Global Wellbeing Summit, where Louisa did the opening address. It was in the opening panel. I was in the closing panel, basically saying, don't be like us, right? Because basically living with purpose is a good thing for any human being to do, whether somebody who has suffered trauma like we have, or multiple traumas like we have, or not. Living with purpose is a good thing. But living with purpose and trying to lift up others around you doesn't say you should not take care of yourself if you've had a trauma.
I hear you.
And so when we were 8 months into our relationship, which was the other trauma that Ricky's passing, brought up, when we were attacked and beaten up and charged and abused and so on for 2 hours, we were very busy at that time, right? Before the incident. Louisa was the CEO of the South African Human Rights Commission. I was the head of the South African NGO Coalition. So we were very busy already. But guess what happened after the incident? We became even more busy,
easier,
right? And actually, to be transparent about it, one of the challenges in Louisa and my relationship was the fact that she just wouldn't go for therapy, even though she was having terrible flashbacks and so on. We went for 2 trauma counseling things together. And then after that, she, at that time I accepted it. She said, each time we go, I have to go back and remember what happened. And I don't want to do that. Yeah. So I stayed with it for about 10 sessions. And so mental health is really a very part of what the foundation does. And so one of the offerings we did there was with the support of TBWA, the advertising agency, and others. We brought out the song Stronger, which is, all Ricky's words. And it was a bit scary for us because it was artificial intelligence.
Yes, AI coming in, singing.
And so, we have our kind of anxieties about it, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
And the third thing is we are now just about to start rolling out a fellowship program to do what Ricky did in his life. Well, what many people don't know is that Ricky was talking to Louisa and I for a while about setting up a foundation and with Bianca and the boys. But he was not waiting for any foundation.
He was doing stuff.
I
mean, look at Cotton Fest. And
but also the way he was helping individual artists. Like, when they had this gathering to commemorate him 3 days after his funeral in Wonder Stadium, I was a bit surprised because speaker after speaker was referring to him as a philanthropist. And Louisa and I, coming from conventional organizational background, we understand a philanthropist is somebody who works at a foundation or a trust or something.
Yeah.
And he had supported. So basically we want to be able to support young cultural creatives.
Wow.
Who, the way he did, and it might take different shapes and forms.
Yeah.
And so we have I've put in, thankfully my book, Letters to My Mother, won the National Institute for Humanities and Social Sciences, which came with 80,000 Rand prize money. So we put that into the thing. I had some work that I did, some speaking engagements. We put the money in there. Plus we've raised, so we have about at least more than close to 1 million.
Yeah.
which we then want to invite the South African public to contribute to it. And if we can get it to like 5 million,
exactly,
then we'll be able to offer at least 9 fellowships per year to one young person in each province, and as well as to offer it to people elsewhere in Africa, because Ricky cared about the African continent and was an internationalist in his orientation.
Wow. Guys, let's contribute. Let's make this thing big, and let's make an impact to young people. Kumi, as we wrap up, you are now teaching a lot. You are like at universities doing a lot. What are you focusing on now in terms of your teaching? I know you at Stanford in the US.
So the Stanford was a visiting lectureship, which is finished.
Okay.
And to be honest, Louisa was the one who made the decision that we should take it.
Okay.
Because after everything with Ricardo's passing, but also the revelation of the trauma that she suffered when we were attacked, which she only remembered, fully 24 and a half years later. She needed to be in a place like a bit of a bubble so she could invest in her healing and so on. So that was the driving force why we went, and it helped considerably. And so we are back now, and happy to be back, of course.
Wow.
And so I think I will continue to be engaging. So right now I'm a visiting fellow at Oxford University, visiting scholar at Oxford University. I'm a visiting fellow in my college at Oxford. And then most of what I'm doing is, engaging with students at universities and sometimes faculty. So I think Stanford gave me a little bit of, and then I am an honorary professor, which means you don't get paid, basically, at the Thunderbird School of Global Management at Arizona State University. And then, but most of my actual engagement is with young people in universities in the Global South.
Yeah. Wow.
But having those prestigious names, unfortunately, I hate to concede this, having Oxford and Stanford and so on, sadly, right, I wish it didn't matter, but sadly, even for people in the Global South, because I was at those places, they actually tend to take me more seriously, because that's how the sort of cultural socialization has happened, especially amongst the elites in the Global South. People who are educated. So.
Yeah. Wow. Kumi, I mean, we can talk about this, like, you and I can stay here for the whole day, but, from me, just to say thank you for your contribution first. I mean, you raised something also in my young mind about the need to be community based, to also look at the needs of the people, and not necessarily, I mean, when you're at college, university, technical, it's always about the career and about what's my first car, but you brought a different kind of thinking, to us in class. And I want to thank you for that. But also to thank you for your broader activism, generally, how you've raised important issues around the world. And wishing you all the best with the foundation and the work of the foundation. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Googs, the one thing in response I should say to that is, when anybody says thank you in the warm and generous way that you did, which I'm grateful for, I always feel obliged to point out that, and I do this from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah.
If I have contributed anything of substance to any of the issues that I cared about for the cause of justice, whether it be gender justice or climate justice and so on, I am very clear that if I contributed this much, I gained this much.
Wow.
Right? And that's what I would like to say to young people. Do not see activism and standing up for that which is right as a suffocating burden. Yes, maybe we have to pay some consequences for it. Maybe we might have to make some sacrifices, but at the end of the day, you will feel a better person. And I say to young people, activism can be sexy. It can be fun. It can be, like if you take the art of thinking about how do we reach people? How do we get people to understand that if they don't act now, our children are not going to have a future because of climate impacts, right? And let's find creative ways. Which song can make it happen? Which dance can make it happen?
Touching the heart.
Yeah. How do we touch people? So I'll say to everybody, we have a simple choice as ethically. We can either choose to be part of the problem or part of the solution. But sadly, choosing to be neutral at a time when our children's futures are at stake, choosing not to wake up and accept that we need to get off our addiction on fossil fuels that is driving this thing. And thankfully we have the alternatives, and Africa is blessed with lots of alternatives. That all of this is within the capability of human creativity. And don't let anybody tell you that your contribution, your participation does not make a difference, because all over history, it is when small groups of people come together and say, we have to do something about that. That indeed is what has spurred the largest movements later on. And to young people especially, I worry a lot, given what we've been through and what so many people are going through. We are dealing with eco-anxiety, climate anxiety, and so on. And I say to young people, take care of yourselves, build circles of support around you. Don't think you can manage all these horrific things that are happening in the world with the genocide and Gaza and so on to cope on your own. Don't feel shy to ask for help. Louisa and I have asked for help. After Ricardo's passing, we received a lot of generosity and support of people, saying what tools we need to grow and so on. And taking care of your mental and physical health is the most powerful act of activism that you can engage in, because it means that you're preparing yourself for a long-term involvement. I will just end by conceding that I'm not a poster boy for taking care and having a balance, but so I would like to suggest it to the people who have a chance to implement in the lifestyle, and I am trying.
I know you are. I'm
not quite there yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. As we say, like, share, and subscribe. Salute.